for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications options. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatterspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Ray. That is Ask Gibbo. Good morning, Gibbo.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Very good, mate. Good to see you. And as always, trying to put the world to rights on the black and white persuasion for the next hour. And we will, as always, pass on your best to Supermac. No news on Supermac's return, but still the same. No change, no better, no worse. Just waiting for an operation. So once he gets that sorted, he will be back, I'm sure, amongst us. But let's look back first at Bournemouth, John. All good runs come to an end. It came to an end in rather dramatic style, and Newcastle looked shattered. Bournemouth took advantage, high pressed, and a disappointing result. But a week off to recharge the batteries and to hopefully bounce back next weekend, which we'll look at in the second half. But what was your feelings, John?
Really, that, Steve. I mean, I think Bournemouth did a job on us. They were tactically excellent. They were athletic, they had a high press, they were quick, they were clinical. It's almost like I'm describing Newcastle in the previous 9 games, isn't it, when I say that? And Bournemouth did that to us. We were tired, I think, mentally as much as physically. Yes, we'd played Wolves in the midweek, but that shouldn't take a lot out of you. I just think mentally, we had to get up for the fight so often, and we won 3 huge games away from home against big clubs like Manchester United, Spurs and Arsenal. And I think mentally it just got tiring for them. And of course, we kept virtually the same team the whole of the time. Did we underestimate them? Maybe a little bit, maybe subconsciously, not deliberately. 1 or 2 players did. But while I give Bournemouth an awful lot of credit, and I do think on the day, they are the best side that's come to St. James's Park this season, on the day. But, you know, while I give them credit, Bournemouth, weren't we incredibly sloppy under no pressure? Some of the passing under no pressure. I mean, the ball was given away by Byrne, by Joe Linton, Bruno on one of the goals. I mean, under no pressure given away. They weren't hounded down at times, and that was awful. And I mean, a lot of our blue chip players didn't turn up on the day. I mean, Isak didn't get a kick. Gray didn't get much service, but his body language, he wasn't room, was he? He was sort of almost going through the motions. If it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Gordon looked drained. Botman only lasted 45 minutes before he got the hook. Shaw was no better, and we didn't pass it. I thought there was some pluses for Bruno, although he got his pocket picked on one of the goals, and I thought Tonali went about putting out fires all over the place. His anticipation of where trouble's going to occur is quite amazing. But they all had a bad day at once. But as I've stressed, and I'll continue stressing, while it was a shocking performance and stunned us because it was so poor, that doesn't make Newcastle United a poor side. They'd won 9 on the trot before that. You know, and a good side doesn't come a bad side in one game. Our recent record is still played 10, won 9, lost 1. And that is an excellent record. And quite frankly, from my point of view, you couldn't. We'll be coming to it later in the show, I know, but you couldn't get a better game to come back on if you're wanting to get back on the front foot than Southampton. And they've had a week off. They've had some days off. You know, Bruno went over to Lake Como, and people took a little bit of time off. That was clever. That was the right thing for Eddie to do. Then bring them back and make certain they've got a different attitude going down to Southampton. But I think deep down inside, I worried about Bournemouth because they were on a 10-game unbeaten run, and although they hadn't a lot of players were out injured, they were a good team. What shocked me was the scoreline, and I know 90 minutes up it was only 2-1. They got two in injury time, but it was the 1-4 scoreline that was the real shock of the day. And the funny thing is, we talk about our injuries, etc., Steve. The funny thing is, Clivert's not normally in the starting 11. He comes on as a sub and takes penalties. I mean, he only started the game because their two centre forwards were both injured, and he ends up with a hat trick and looks as good as his dad did, and he's pumped like on the day. But we've got to put that as a bad day at the office and get it out of our minds and go from there. Because the only thing that'll stop us winning at Southampton is if we are inferior to them on attitude towards the game, on confidence, on determination. Because man for man, we're so much a better side. So I'm looking for us to bounce back very positively because that was a shock. But it was in that I think virtually everybody was off. It was just some were off more than others.
I picked two players out there who did show a little bit about them. Martin Dubravka, who's had very little to do in the previous 9 or 10 games since he came in to replace Nick Pope. Kept the score down, John. Showed his value as a shot stopper, I thought.
Yeah, he did very, very well, and good on him. He certainly had plenty of practice in that game because the back four in front of him, I thought the two fullbacks who were England fullbacks, who I've got so much time for, were getting skinned. And centre of defence, Byrne and either Shaw or Botman had nightmares, so he had nothing in front of him. And while we've heard Eddie talk about Pope could be in contention to make the trip to Southampton, I feel that you can't. Dubrovka, having committed himself to not go to Saudi, where he could have made a fortune, to stay with us till the end of the season, blah, 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 has got to be rewarded by keeping his place at Southampton despite or if Pope happens to be fit. Because it would be, I mean, if you dropped only him, you would have to drop the whole team on the performance, wouldn't you? If you dropped only him, that would be cruel after Bournemouth, I feel.
Sandro Tonali, again, has had a lot of plaudits, but he was my only other standout. I mean, he was superb, John.
He is absolute quality. And the thing that staggers me, not only is he athletic, and not only does he use the ball well, and not only does he try to pass forward instead of sideways, which is wonderful to see, but his anticipation on where trouble is going to flare. And you see him getting there before it actually happens. He was putting out fires all over the pitch in that match. He is absolutely terrific. Of the outfield players, he was by far the best against Bournemouth.
Yep, no doubt about it. Okay, moving on. I got sent this by somebody here this week, John. Talksport did a poll. Who is currently the best striker in the world at the moment? Harry Kane, 16%. Erling Haaland, 17%. Alexander Isak, though, won the poll. And it's a poll, John. It's opinion. 45%. What's your feelings on that? Is he currently the best striker in the world?
He was before Bournemouth. Against Bournemouth, he looked like one of the worst strikers in the world. But so did all his teammates virtually. But yes, I think he is. You know what makes him so good is that people normally have huge pluses in one area. Like Haaland's all about finishing. Forget about Haaland in build-up. He is a colossal finisher. His goals record proves that, etc., etc. But I mean, Isak is 3 players holding the one. He's a midfield guy in terms of silky skills, silky on the ball, terrific quick feet. He's a winger who drifts out wide and can make assists for other players. And he's a box finisher. He's 3 separate players in one, and that is not often the case in a centre forward. Shearer was an out and out goal scorer. Jackie Milburn and Supermac were out and out goal scorers. Haaland is an out and out goal scorer. This guy's an all rounder. As I say, against Bournemouth, you wouldn't recognise if somebody had parachuted in from the moon and you said, "You see that big lad up front, the skinny one, he's the best football player on earth as a centre forward." You would have been saying, "Well, pull the other leg, it's got bells on," because it didn't look that way on the day. But he is as good as that, in my opinion, yes.
Okay, good stuff. Plenty of questions coming in the chat as well. We are live this morning, so lots of people got lots of questions for John. Paul says, if a club bids 10 million plus for Lloyd Kelly, should the club snap their hands off John, even if it leaves us a bit short at centre back? I would accept it and look at a young prospect from the Championship or abroad. Of course, we've got Lascelles as well, who had a little setback, but will be back at some point to play a part this season, you would imagine, for his farewell, his swan song. But Lloyd Kelly, interesting links with Fenerbahce at first with Jose Mourinho, which was downplayed quite a bit by people in the know up here. But then Juventus have now come in, haven't they?
Yeah, but the latest I'm hearing on that is that Newcastle haven't been keen on playing ball, or Eddie Howe in particular hasn't been keen on playing ball. And so Juventus have switched just today their attention to a Chelsea fullback. And I mean, Chelsea's got so many players that they've had to build 3 dressing rooms down there to house them all. So, I mean, they can afford to let people go. The trouble, I've got a feeling that in this particular window, which is just about to close, as we know, Steve, I don't think Longstaff will go. I don't think Kelly will go. And I think the only possibility, and I'm talking about outgoing, is probably Almiron to America. That's not to say that in the summer, when there's more time, that an offer wouldn't be accepted for Kelly or for Longstaff, because it probably would. Anything coming on Kelly would be 100% profit because we paid nothing for him, and anything coming on Longstaff would be seen as 100% profit because he comes through the academy. The one thing that bothers me, Steve, about transfers right now, and I know where the guy's coming from saying snap the hand off for Kelly, because he hasn't looked a good player at all when he's had the odd chance so far, and he's been responsible for 1 or 2 goals. However, it could just be a slow start, as Hall had a very slow start in his 1 season here on loan. Hall looked a pretty average player who only got in the first team very occasionally and has looked a wow this season. So perhaps Kelly can still come good. But the one thing that would bother me, Steve, about selling right now, in the summer different, with Kelly and with Longstaff and with Trippier. But if you sell right now, like there's talk of Almiron going to America, and Eddie has warned us, that doesn't mean anybody will come in that probably won't. Well, we are batting very strongly on 2 fronts. I know we've still got the FA Cup, but we've only started that. But we're batting strongly to get into the Champions League. We were 4th before they defeated Bournemouth, so we're in a Champions League position. And we're on the cusp of being in a Wembley Cup final. If we sell Almiron or Kelly or Longstaff in this window and do not replace them, what we're doing, Steve, is temporarily weakening the squad, because we haven't got enough strength and depth now. That's been proved. You look at the subs that come on against Bournemouth. They didn't improve the side. Look at the subs that come on against Wolves when we're 3-0 up. We lost our way completely. So we haven't got strength in depth. Can we afford to weaken our squad for the run into the end of the season when we're looking to make the Champions League and we're looking to win the Carabao Cup? That's what bothers me, is what Eddie said about somebody going out doesn't mean somebody will come in this window. Well, if they don't come in, we've weakened the squad. We haven't stayed still. We've weakened it. So that is a concern for me.
Okay, where are we at with Miggy Almiron, John?
I think that'll happen. I think Almiron and Kelly will be in the squad that goes down to, and Longstaff, goes down to Southampton, flies down to Southampton tomorrow. I think he intends to take Miggy as things stand right now at this moment, but I think that's liable to happen and is pretty certain to happen this window. We'll only get something like 8 mil down and 3 mil on extras, so it's not going to be a fortune. But I think that'll probably happen. They'll gamble on getting through the rest of this season by Barnes getting fit again, and Barnes and Gordon and Murphy and Joe Linton juggling the two wings, and of course it still leaves with vulnerable with Isak. But I think Almiron will probably go, but because Eddie is loyal to players and is happy to keep the same squad, I think they'll all go down to Southampton on the plane tomorrow. Unless there's a sudden development later today on Almiron. But Almiron is on and is likely to go. I don't think Kelly or Longstaff this window are likely to go.
Morning, John Askew. He says, John, exactly 2 years ago, we were struggling physically and becoming tired in games. The same might be happening now. Are you concerned? And what's James Bunce's role in this? Things have improved after. Well, that's where he goes. I didn't get any other part of the question there. And then he said, John, with us in contention for cups in a top 4 or 5 finish, do you think it's important we sign 1 or 2 players in the next week and a half? So. Yeah, I mean, take that one first, John. John, talking about the tiredness in games. I mean, it's one game, John. It's one game. It comes off the back of a very busy Christmas period. If we collapse like a pack of cards at Southampton on Saturday, I'll be concerned. You'll be concerned. We'll all be concerned. But what's your feelings on that? And James Bunce's role?
It is that. It's only one game. It sounds absurd to a lot of fans when you talk about players being tired. Because they're elite athletes, they're trained. If they can't play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, there's something sadly wrong with them. I don't know that they were tired physically. I think they were tired mentally because they'd had to get up for the fight so often with those big games and had done so well in doing that in the way we play high octane. I think they were tired mentally. But you summed it up there, Steve. It was one game. Now, if we go down to Southampton, who are terrible, by the way, and we get beat or we only draw there, then the alarm bells are ringing because we have got a problem that could be more than a one-off. At the moment, the problem against Bournemouth is purely a one-off. We were perfectly all right before that, and I would expect us to be perfectly all right again at Southampton. But I mean, it's unthinkable to think we imploded Southampton because not only would that be a concern after Bournemouth, but you've got to remember, Steve, that after that, we've got Fulham at home, then we've got Arsenal to go to a League Cup final. We can't afford to be tired in any shape or form with Arsenal coming up because we lost 4-1 to Bournemouth. If that score was repeated against Arsenal, we don't make the League Cup final. So we've got to make the League Cup final. 2-0 up at half time with the second half played at home effectively because it's too late. We've got to be up for that. So we've got to go down there and do the business. And I believe we will, because I believe it's the best opposition we can get. And people will then say to me, Steve, well, Southampton, is it a banana skin? You know, they've done so badly that we get it wrong and it's a banana skin. And my answer to that is, would you prefer us after Bournemouth to go away to Liverpool or back to Arsenal looking to get an away win or any game like that? No, you wouldn't. If you could pick your opposition, you would pick Southampton. And we've got Southampton. So let's make the best of it.
John's other question was, with us in contention for cups in a top 4 or 5 finish, do you think it's important we sign 1 or 2 players in the next week and a half? Because it's looking unlikely again.
Yeah, I think it's totally unlikely. I don't think it'll happen. In an ideal world, it would. I'm sick if these transfer windows had let us down, and because we haven't done good business in the transfer window for a while now, and we're always told it's financial fair play, and it is. But really, when can we start buying properly again? Um, I don't think we will sign this window, but in a way, I've already answered that question because I've said what concerns me is not just do we sign somebody before the window closes, but that we don't sell too many because our bench is abysmal at the moment. I mean, it doesn't matter how good the player is or he isn't. I mean, Almiron, Kelly, and Longstaff are not first teamers by any stretch of the imagination. They're subs. But if we sold one of them or two of them in this transfer window and we got nobody in, we are weaker at the end of the transfer window than we were at the beginning of it. And we're still searching for glory on three fronts. Europe in the league and the possibility of winning the League Cup or the FA Cup. So we can't afford to weaken the squad, for goodness sake. We need to strengthen it.
Good morning, mate. Hope you're well. He says, does John think it's time for the club to come out and tell the fans what's happening with sponsorships, etc., ground naming, training kit? Lots of people starting to get a little bit irate at the lack of activity by Mr. Silverstone.
I think it is. I would like to see that. I don't think we're an open book too much. And I would also like the club to explain many things. What the gentleman was asking for there, and also to explain just in layman's terms exactly where we are with financial fair play. How did we almost get tripped up where we had to sell it 24 hours notice Minter and Elliot Anderson, and how we appeared to have 70 grand to sign Gay from Crystal Palace, but we couldn't get the deal over the line. But we haven't got that money now anymore. It's not available this window. Why, if it was available then? There'll be obvious reasons, but it would be nice to inform your customers about what's going on so they can stay solid with the club, behind the club, understand. Because if you tell Geordies what you're doing and you're doing it to protect NUFC, then Geordies will accept that because their love is NUFC. But if they don't know what's happening and they're just left to stew, these are the people that turn up in their 50,000s for games. I think it would help if there was more explanation given. And we get people that are forced by football law to appear at press conferences both prior to a fixture and immediately after the fixture, and that's the manager. Occasionally he puts up his number two, but in the main it's Eddie, appears on a Friday press conference, then appears immediately after the game in whatever ground they're in. Perhaps once a month, somebody from the board, not Eddie. Eddie can't answer those questions, nor should he, because they're not his department. But it would be nice to hear sometime what the explanations are. I'm not rattling anybody's cages. I'm not suggesting that Newcastle aren't doing everything it's physically possible to be done, because I've got no reason to think that. And we're grateful to the Newcastle United hierarchy for what the club's become after what it was under Ashley. But explanations from time to time wouldn't be a bad thing.
No, certainly not. David Foster, good morning. He says, John, fatigue, both physically and mentally, will have its toll, but a winning mentality and motivation should be paramount. The players say they want to play at the highest level, which is a good point. George says, what's Silverstone doing? We should be buying and selling. He also wants to know where all the season ticket money's gone. I don't think it's as simple as that anymore, George. Sadly, in the old days it used to be, but now try making your heads or tails or making common sense of Newcastle United's or any football club's account. It's almost impossible these days. And John says, John, if you've got money in the bank, do you think there should be regulations saying your income must be a certain level before you can spend it? Is that how PSR works? It's beyond reason. Lots of confusion over PSR, and not even Eddie Howe understands it, John.
No, he admitted that, didn't he? I mean, what John's saying is absolutely right. When the great transformation of clubs happened in recent times, but a few years ago, when Chelsea suddenly become big time again under Abramovich, when Man City become big time again under their new owners, their current owners, there wasn't the restrictions of financial fair play. They were allowed to spend whatever Abramovich or the Man City sheikhs were willing to put into the club. And that is fair. Now, the theory of financial fair play, I can understand, because they're trying to protect the smaller clubs like Bournemouth, who didn't look as if they needed protection up here, but they're trying to protect them by saying, look, we want a fair playing field. You can't get a rich guy coming in and blowing these sides all out the water, and we'll try to make it a fair playing field. But in effect, what they've done, they've halted progress. If a club's been neglected to the term that Newcastle United were neglected under Ashley, then it takes it an eternity to build up the revenue from scratch through sponsorship, etc., to allow them the leverage to buy players. So they're really, instead of giving a level playing field, Newcastle are getting persecuted. And other sides that have come out of the blue, whether that's Aston Villa or Forest in the future. And they've got to, it hasn't, the theory was brilliant, the practice has been anything but. And I think it is desperately unfair on a club like Newcastle. And being a club like Newcastle, being forced to sell the good kids they've brought through, like Elliot Anderson, and like they might have to do now, and we don't want Lewis Miley being put at risk or anyone like that, being forced to do that to fit in with financial rules is desperately unfair, and it is not good.
No, certainly not. Apparently, we've got the 15th biggest turnover in the world and 7th in the Premier League, says George. Yeah, I've seen the figures come out, and Dave's pointing to the Deloitte money list that we are 16th and still can't buy anyone. It is frustrating. And, none of us are accountants, really. Maybe one or two in the chat, who knows? But, none of us are accountants. None of us really understand it. What we do know is that Newcastle United have been hung out to dry a little bit with the new rules and regs, and it's been almost put in place to protect the big six, and I think most of us have found that out to our cost. And there it is, the Deloitte Football Money League. Newcastle down in 15th. Match day revenue, 65.7 million. Broadcast money, great. Newcastle are on TV quite a bit, 214.5 million. Commercial revenue, that's where we're really suffering. Look at that, £89.7 million. Total income then for Newcastle is 371 million. And when you look at Real Madrid there, people say, who could buy Bruno? Who could buy Isak? Who could buy our top players? Well, that gives you your answer there. Your Real Madrid, your Manchester Cities, your Paris Saint-Germain's and your Manchester United's and Bayern Munich's and your Barcelona's are still, far and above us. Even Arsenal, took the risk on getting that new stadium in. But look at the difference between Newcastle's income and Arsenal's, Liverpool's, Tottenham's. And the one thing that those three have got in common is bigger stadiums. They've gone on and bought bigger stadiums, developed bigger stadiums, which increases the commercial income and increases the amount of people who can come into the ground on a match-per-match basis. And, that is why Newcastle, West Ham, Aston Villa, et al. Are getting left behind. And as soon as Newcastle, I guess, have got the permission to build that new stadium, the better for Newcastle, because it will increase things. But Saudis and people who they're involved with won't come and sponsor St James's Park if they know, I guess, that there's going to be a new stadium, a shiny new stadium, bigger, better, in virtually the same place. I think that's the reason that we can't bring in those kind of sponsorships and deals. And unfortunately, as each year ticks by, we get a further bit behind them, John, those big teams.
That's the trouble, because we talk about the avenues that can bring big money in, and there's certainly the gamble that was taken by Spurs, etc., in the bigger stadiums is paid off. But how long are we going to be forced to live on the poverty line? Because even when a decision is made on the new stadium, if it was made this afternoon and we've got the bulldozers into Leazes Park, it still takes time before we've got the new stadium up and running and filled it. So, yes, we've got to go down that route as soon as we can. But it's not going to help this season, next season, or the season after. And we've got to try to help ourselves in the main along those lines. And, having had the clever buying we had early on, we've run into a brick wall of not being able to buy, and we've got to find a way around it somehow. I mean, it's disappointing transfer window after disappointing transfer window. And it seems that, there's more concern about having to sell players than us being able to buy players. We're always told, without anybody explaining in depth, we're always told that, by the way, the next window will be good. By the way, the next window will be good. But when the next window comes, it ain't good.
Okay, halfway through the show, time for an ad break. We will be back after this.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. Contact them at their website, skipsandbins.com, or email www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickies.co.uk. Email them info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. Travel and Tourism Award winners 2024. 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges, all excursions included. Find them at their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. Their website is media-arts.co.uk. And we're also available as a podcast. You can find us on Sports Social, Podcast Network, iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel, then hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up that likes each video, and click share to share to your social media. Some Newcastle United events coming up. An evening with the entertainers, 24th of January 2025. Box office number is 0191 243 1171. Or website, Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. An evening with Lee Clark takes place on the 31st of January at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are available on Voucher or from newcastlelegends.com. An afternoon with Celeste Ferdinand takes place on the 6th of April 2025, 12 p.m. till 4 p.m, and that's at the O2 City Hall in Newcastle. Tickets from www.ticketmaster.co.uk or from Voucher. And did you get a book voucher for Christmas? Then why not buy The Entertainers, 1992 to 1997, Kevin Keegan's Legacy by Will Scott. Priced $18.99, also available from newcastlelegends.com.
Okay, welcome back to Ask Gibbo. A few questions already in the mix for the second half. John says, is Shaw's suspect form down partly to him not having agreed a contract extension, John? It's no excuse, but it can happen in football. I mean, I don't think that's the case, John.
No. It's underway, the discussions. I don't think it is. He's had a season where, disciplinary-wise, it hasn't worked for him. I mean, he missed 2 games before he's come back there because of the League Cup and the league, the totting up of bookings. He was sent off when we played Southampton on the opening day, disgracefully sent off, I hasten to add, by play acting from an opponent. I don't think it is. I look at him, he's the best passer possibly in the club. And yet, you look at him against Bournemouth, but they were all the same. And under no pressure, the passing suddenly looks very lackadaisical. He's got that sort of style, hasn't he? It's a bit the ultimate of that sort of style was Beckenbauer. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute Shaw's anything like Beckenbauer, but it's the same sort of casual, Cary Grant approach to football. I'll play in a tuxedo and I'll have a fag in my hand because I'm that good. And then sometimes feathers get ruffled and they don't look quite that good. He'll get a contract extension, all right. But I would like to see them all, and it's going to start at Southampton and then against Fulham, all to get themselves polished up, dust it down and come out in the way they did the previous 9 games before Bournemouth, because we need to get back to that at Southampton, because we've got to follow up the second leg of Arsenal coming up, and we can't underestimate that. I know we've got a 2-goal lead. We're on the cusp of going to Wembley, but we've got to confirm it. And that was a real jog to us, the Bournemouth, and we've got to make certain that that doesn't follow on. Because if we don't win at Southampton, Steve, the mood's going to be very different for them 2 home games against Fulham and Arsenal, isn't it? We're going to be twitchy. We've got to not be twitchy going into the Arsenal return that will send us to Wembley. We want to be strutting. And I'll come back to it. We have got the best game to recover from Southampton. Southampton is the best game to recover from Bournemouth. Why? Because unbelievably, mate, this side could be crowned the worst Premier League side in history. Now, that is hard to believe, because that record is currently held by Derby County from 2007 to 2008, when they got only 11 points. And that's always been seen as unassailable. There's not another side going to be as bad as that again. But when we got to the halfway stage of this season, a couple of games back, Southampton were on 6 points. At that stage, when Derby set the record, they had 7 points. And since then, Southampton have lost against Manchester United and Forest. So they're in danger of being crowned the worst side in Premier League history. They've scored 15 goals all season, which is the worst return in all the top 5 divisions in this country. So they have got to be beaten, and they are the best opposition we could get if we're going to recover and get back to what we were, because they are awful. And if we get at them right from the kickoff, we will win that one and be back to where we are and be back to positivity for Fulham and Arsenal.
67 in the chat. Yes, please hit the like button, folks, if you can. And that means we've got over 200 watching on Twitter, X as it's known now. Get over onto YouTube, hit the subscribe button on NUFC Matters. We do 7 shows a week. Next question comes from Darren Lee. He says, do you think the club will freeze season ticket prices, which apparently Newcastle United Supporters Trust have put a letter forward to Darren Eales? I think it's highly unlikely, John, especially when on one hand, people are saying, where's all the money? Where's the money for players, etc.? I think the last thing the club will be doing with that kind of commercial income is freezing ticket prices.
No, I don't think they will. I say sadly, because obviously I'm all on the fans' side, whether it's television giving us disgraceful kickoff times, playing away from home, or whether it's the amount of money they've got to pay to watch their team, because it's a working class sport, so we're told, or it certainly was. But yes, we're in a cleft stick at the moment. We need to make more money, which means that's one way of raising money is through the sale of season tickets. But again, I come back to, I would like to see Newcastle United put up 2 or 3 guys, whether it's Darren Eales, whether it's Paul Mitchell, whether it's Silverstone, whether it's all 3, put them up to explain the situation financially within St. James's Park. Now, there might well be a feeling that they don't want to get their fingers burned, because if you remember, when they put Paul Mitchell up not so long back, Steve, he said a couple of things like the transfer policy is not fit for purpose, remember? And the backlash that come out of that was absolutely huge. But that was just put up in front of journals. What I would like to see is like the press conferences are on a Friday, when they're online and they're live, and so it's not just a bunch of journals getting together because they're in listening to what is being said, because that can be open to interpretation. How's it interpreted by the writers who are listening in? But let's see it live, so it's going out live to fans, and there's the explanations, and the twist is not put on the answers. We just hear them as they come. But there's so much we want to ask. Okay, they needn't have it in front of 1,000 fans, where it might become chaotic with the fans asking questions. But even if it's journalists asking questions and them explaining, I would like to hear it on a live platform like you will get tomorrow when Eddie does his press conference, and get some questions answered. I think it would do Newcastle good. It would certainly stop all the speculation, which can get outlandish on social media. And at least it would tell people where we're coming from and keep people on side. Because at the moment, we're bemused about sponsorship deals, are bemused about what's going to happen with the stadium, we're bemused about financial fair play. There's just so much we don't understand, and without explanation, we're not going to understand. And Eddie is not the one that can explain it. He can explain about the team to a certain extent, about transfers, not transfer policy, but individuals. And that's the end of what he does.
Jeff says, I missed Keith Downey standing in a deserted car park at midnight. And Gary says, the more that the broadcasters pick us for live games, the more TV revenue we'll get. How style of play and the attacking players we have are certainly helping to increase revenue. John's kept us busy with questions. He says, John, you've been around the club for a while. We're still in the Cups. Champion League's possible next season. And the Saudis want to make us number one. Is this your best time as a Magpie?
It's certainly potentially one of the best, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, as a little kid, watching in my school outfit, the 50s was a wonderful time. As a hack and also a fan, the Entertainers and Bobby Robson were lovely times. But these are threatening to beat all that. And when we won those 3 away games on the trot, culminating in about 9 days, culminating with us beating Arsenal, I thought we are on the verge of something extra special here. Now, I know Bournemouth has pricked our balloon, but it's only 1 game. I'm just worried that we don't. I anticipate so much this season, Steve. We can make the Champions League, no doubt about it. We can make the Carabao Cup final, and then we're just 1 game up, bringing some silverware here, no doubt about it. But we're not going to get any help in this transfer window with new players. But let's not weaken the side by selling some and having an awful bench. I'm just a little concerned that between now and the end of the season, we'll blow 2 great opportunities, which is Europe and the League Cup. And there's still the FA Cup, which could become something, but won't at the first stage. But let's bring this season to a conclusion that's worthwhile. And that means we've got to either be in Europe or win the League Cup, and preferably do both, because why not?
Yes, fingers crossed things can pick up. It's only 1 game. I keep saying to people, it's 1 game. If we go on a bad run of games, and then it's time to start questioning things. But a defeat against Bournemouth was, it was on the cards. I think we started that game the way we finished against Wolves, and it's not too disappointing. So keep your chins up, everybody out there, and hopefully back to winning ways at the weekend. And of course, we do travel to Southampton this weekend. It's a good old-fashioned 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday at St Mary's Stadium. 3,000 Newcastle fans are making their way down there. A few of our viewers will be down there as well. This will be the away fans' first visit to the new away section, because that's been relocated from the north end of the ground, the Northam stand, to the southwest part of the ground, and that is the Chapel Kingsland corner. That alteration hasn't really affected the amount of tickets we've been given or amount of tickets that we have sold. Following victories at Ipswich Town, Manchester United and Spurs, 3 points here would see Newcastle win 4 consecutive away games in the Premier League for the first time since October 1996, when Kevin Keegan, of course, was manager. And for those of you statos out there, the 4 wins came at Sunderland, 2-1. Spurs 2-1, Leeds 1-0, and Derby County 1-0. A 2-0 defeat at Leicester then prevented Kevin Keegan's side from matching the 5-game run that they had recorded in October 1994. So a couple of KK records that Eddie Howe's chasing down. It's not unfamiliar territory for Eddie. He's done a few of them in recent years. And Newcastle, of course, also won 4 consecutive championship games on the road in 2010 and 2016. A little bit early for team news. Eddie will be doing his press conference tomorrow, but Harvey Barnes, Callum Wilson and Jamal Lascelles remain out. Nick Pope, as Gibbo mentioned earlier, is nearing a return. We, of course, will find out what's in Eddie's mind tomorrow and find out, of course, on Saturday whether he goes with Pope or Dubravka. Joe Linton goes into the game 2 bookings shy of a 2-match suspension. He's racking them up at a fair old notch again this season. As for Southampton, Newcastle have been linked with Tyler Diblin. He's now got an ankle problem, joining Ross Stewart and Jack Stevens on the injured list for the Saints. The hosts have signed a midfielder, Albert Kronbach from Rennes, on an initial deal for the rest of the season. There's no Ben Brayton Diaz. He's rejoined Sheffield United on loan. And Southampton are the lowest goal scorers in the Premier League. John again has alluded to this. 15 goals they've scored, and they've conceded a staggering 50. And we're only in January at this moment in time. They've won one of their 22 Premier League games so far this season, which was a 1-0 home victory over Everton, and their only clean sheet in 10 home fixtures. They've lost 8, they've drawn 1, and that was with Ipswich. A couple of Geordie ex-Newcastle players down there. Adam Armstrong, he is still there, still getting a game as well. He's their joint Premier League scorer to date with a staggering 2 goals. One of them which came from the penalty spot. And there's also Ryan Fraser, who is there. He hasn't played since Ivan Jurek was appointed manager last month, and he doesn't appear to be injured. Same old for Ryan Fraser, by the sound of it. Tom Dixon mentioned earlier in the chat, Sam Barrett is the referee. It's his second game in charge of a Newcastle fixture this season. The first one was against Brentford in the Carabao Cup. And VAR is Chris Kavanagh. So, John, as we've already said, this game is a great one to bounce back to, isn't it, for Newcastle?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, you mentioned there when you were giving up all the stats, Steve, you mentioned there that if we win, it'll be 4 Premier League wins on the bounce, equaling what Kevin Keegan did. What it will also be, Steve, it'll be 5 away wins on the bounce, because we also won at Arsenal in the League Cup, if you remember.
Well said. Yeah, so exactly.
It'll be 5 away wins. Can you imagine, Newcastle, the waveform we had not so long ago that we were moaning about? Can you imagine Newcastle getting 5 successive away victories? I mean, fabulous. And I think we will, because I think this is the perfect match for us. And I'll not be available to do this podcast next week if we get beat, because I'll cut me throat, because I can't imagine us getting beat down there. And it's the perfect remedy to Bournemouth. They are a dreadfully awful side. They're on their knees. They've changed the manager. Russell Martin was gung-ho and asked for all the problems he got. The guy they've got in now is more doer. He's more organised. And they're looking okay in small patches where they knock the ball around well, but they don't score, they don't finish, and then they get clobbered at the back and they lose. And I think this is the match where we go back to our winning ways. We've won 9 out of the last 10. Let's emphasise that. You've been emphasising it. I've been emphasising it. The record is still good. There's one blip, albeit huge, but this is the time to put that right. And I honestly believe we will put it right, Steve.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, this has got the feelings of the Sheffield United game about it when we went down there and thumped them by 8 and chasing down Premier League records. But they found a little bit of sturdiness. I would say there's a little bit more about them than there was. But this really should be a confident win for Newcastle, and I am going to go for a 4-0 win down there. Jason's gone for 3-0. What's your prediction on this one, John?
I'm going for 3-0. Before I saw Jason's, that was my score as well. We score goals. We didn't let goals in before Bournemouth. They don't score goals. So, it should be comprehensive. I mean, all we have got to do is match them on enthusiasm, be more confident than they are, go about it in the right way from the kickoff. We didn't look right from the kickoff against Bournemouth. We've had a free week. The boys have had free time off early in the week, and Bruno's got himself away to Italy, etc., etc. Good on them. They've come back. They've got to have the right attitude. Let them be bristling a little bit about what happened last weekend. And if we play anywhere near our form, our players are so superior to theirs, it's untrue. We win, and I'm taking a 3-0. But I'll settle for that. But if they want 4, if they want 8 like Sheffield United, that's lovely. But I don't want to raise expectations too high, and then we get a 1-0 and we'll moan about it. But let us win first and foremost. And I repeat, this is not a banana skin. This is an opportunity.
Just want to finish off on your great mate Bob Moncur. He celebrated a big birthday this week, John. 80 years of age. Wonderful to see him and reach that age. I bumped into him. He was in front of me at Arsenal, and I had a chat with him in the pub. Great to see him. Top man, Bob, and he's as eager as you and I, isn't he, to see that mantle taken away from him, which is the last person to lift a trophy for Newcastle United.
Yeah, I mean, I was at his birthday party that Newcastle threw for him this week in the Moncur Suite, and I was there with various people from the First Cup team. Jim Scott was there, Alan Foggin was there, John Craggs was there, etc., etc. Other players like Dave Hilly and Jim Pearson and Mickey Quinn was there. And it was lovely. We had 4 hours at St James's Park with the great man. Made it to 80. That's absolutely fabulous because he's had 2 big cancer scares. Both me and him were talking together and saying, "Listen, pal, you lifted the trophy in '69. Now I was up in the press box when you did. We've got to stay alive, mate, till we see Newcastle win trophies again." And we both agreed that we've made a deal with the big man upstairs that he won't call our number until we see Newcastle with a trophy. And once we do, I'm going to be greedy and refuse to die again until we win another trophy and a bigger one the next time round. So I'm not just thinking I might snuff it after we win the Carabao Cup this year, because I would want to go on and see we win again and again. But it was lovely to celebrate with Bob. He had all his family around him, as well as personal friends and football friends. And it was lovely to see, and well done him, and well done the people that come to the party. I mean, people like Scotty travelled down from Falkirk to be there, etc. And, that was good to see. So well done, Bob. And Newcastle United, may we have another Bob pretty quick, because we need to see that silverware above a captain's head. And in this case, it's Bruno's. We want to see Bruno standing with a trophy.
And we've been promoting an evening with the entertainers. It takes place tomorrow. I think there's about 20 tickets remaining for the event. But the likes of Kevin Scott, Steve Watson, Lee Clark, Steve Howie, John Beresford, Mickey Quinn, of course, you've already mentioned, Rule Fox, Peter Beardsley, Rob Lee, Brian Kilcline, Lee Clark, Alan Thompson, Darren Peacock, all in attendance tomorrow. Hopefully the weather doesn't put off Keith Gillespie and Liam O'Brien. Brian Kilcline's already messaged us this morning saying a bit of rain and wind's not going to stop me being there. So they can't wait. They're looking forward to it, John. And you're hosting the night tomorrow night. I bet you're looking forward to that.
Oh, absolutely. One of the standout events of the year socially for me, to be mixing with players of that quality. And what they give us, is still the template for modern Newcastle United. This is what the current team are aiming for. They're aiming for the consistency of the entertainers who went from the brink of the old third division to runners up in the Premier League 2 successive seasons. The only thing they didn't do was bring us silverware, and that's something I would love to see Eddie Howe do for us. But I mean, you think of those players. Eddie Howe would love to be Kevin Keegan. Anthony Gordon would love to be Ginola. Isak would love to get the goals that Shearer got, etc., etc. They all want to be what the entertainers were, with one huge difference, that this lot actually wins something. And I'm looking forward. Tomorrow night will be absolutely fabulous. It'll blow away all my thoughts about Bournemouth, and I'll be in the right frame of mind for Southampton the next day.
Great stuff, Gibbo. As always, thanks for giving us an hour of your time. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow and, of course, next week. Take care, mate.
All the best, pal. Take care.